Earlier, I was thinking about some of the coolest Pokemon in the series, like Metagross, Aegislash, Klefki. Well, maybe not Klefki, but I did notice an overwhelming number of the coolest Pokemon are Steel types. So today, I'm going to see if I can beat Pokemon Ultra Moon with hardcore Nuzlocke rules using only Steel types. The rules to the challenge will be up on the screen right now. You can pause if you want to take a look. They'll also be down in the description. Before we get into it, let's quickly take a look at our encounters. By far, one of my favorite things about the Ultra games is how fun the encounters you get access to are. I mean, we get Aegislash. What's more fun than Aegislash? I mean, other than a Blissey covered in butter. This run had some crazy highs and super low lows, so you are in for a treat if I do say so myself. Our run kicks off and we are almost immediately greeted with our starter choice. Obviously, none of these little guys are Steel type, so we go with Poplio. This is mainly because he looked the least likely to spit in my face when hoisted up like this. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Rowlet. But also because this means that Hal, our rival, will choose Litten, which is a fire type and super effective against all Steel types. And at this point, you already know I like the punishment. From here, there's a ton of story stuff that we'll skip, but we are introduced to two of my favorite characters, one of which is absolute mustache goals. And from here, it's just a little hop, skip, and a jump over the trainer school where we get our first encounter, a Magnemite. I love this little guy, and I love that he evolves into three little homies stuck together. We nickname it Magnetite, and we see that it has the sturdy ability, which, spoiler alert, Hala is so hard. Getting sturdy here is the only way this run isn't instantly dead. More on that later. For now, we have to graduate from trainer school, and the only way we can do that is by beating the absolute tar out of our teacher's Rowlet. Sorry, Teach. At this point, we're introduced to the first trial captain, Ilima, who is so obviously a boy, and I have no idea how anyone could think otherwise. And since we finally graduated with a hearty more, Tauros finally lets us pass. From here, we head into Howley City, where we can finally take off that stupid hat and upgrade our fit. And with my drip in this mint condition, Team Skull has no choice but to roll up on us. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Team Skull is easily the best evil team. How and I quickly dispatch these goons, and then we're challenged by Trial Captain Ilima, who at this point is really not too big of a challenge for us. We use Thundershock to take out his Yungoos, and then the Smeargle comes in. We resist both its moves, so we're able to tank it and then take it out with some Thundershocks. After a few quick stops, we're able to head into the first trial, which is against this exceptionally acrobatic rat. On paper, this totem is okay for us. It does have stab dark type moves, which we don't resist, but our defense is pretty good. So barring some crazy amount of flinches from Bite, we're probably fine. Turn 1, we fire off a Thundershock, and it hits us with Super Fang, which is just about the worst move it could use on turn 1. After it calls its ally, we're at half health against 2 rats. To make matters worse, we're mashing A for our attack, which if you've ever played this game before, I'm sure this has happened to you. It makes us target the ally Pokemon for whatever reason, which is definitely not who we want to be hitting at this point. Thankfully, the totem goes for a Scary Face, which allows us another probably 2 turns to live. The next turn it hits us with another Bite, which flinches us. Now we have to live through another Bite, which we do, and we take it out with a final Thundershock. This first island is kind of a death trap for Steel types. With that challenge out of the way, we can get our next catch, a Diglett, whose Alolan form is Steel Ground. While Ground doesn't resist fire, it does help us with super effectively hitting fire, which is one of our main weaknesses at this point. So this thing is a great addition to the team, even if it is basically made of paper. Plus, it's one of the most ridiculous regional forms. After the totem fight, we take care of some stuff that we need to do, and then we have our first battle against Hal with our new team. He leads with Litten, which I wanted to use to explain how Diglett could be helpful for our team, but unfortunately, I actually forgot to switch our team up before going into the battle. No worries though, the first turn we outspeed with Thundershock, and we managed to get a lucky paralysis, which leaves it fully paralyzed on that turn. We almost take it out on the next turn, but not quite, so we have to live through an Ember, which we managed to do, and we finish it off on the next turn. Next up is Noibat, who, despite hitting us with a super annoying confusion, can't really do anything offensively, so we take it out. Finally, it's his Pikachu, so we get an opportunity to show off our new Diglett. 1 magnitude is more than enough to finish it off. Now we've finally arrived at the most torturous part of this run, this old man right here. So if you don't know, Hala is the Kahuna of the first island, which means we have to beat him to get off of this island. Not only that, he specializes in fighting types, which hit both of our Pokemon super effectively at this point. I'll save you the trouble and show you how our first attempt ended. Mind you, Machop is his first Pokemon. If we're going to be able to take out Hala, we're going to need to rely on our wits, our strategy, and most of all, some really good luck. So our first iteration of our strategy involved us using Normalium Z to use Supersonic on the Machop on the first turn. From here, if it hit itself in confusion, we'd be able to take it out. Z Supersonic does give us a speed boost, which allows us to outspeed the Crabrawler. Unfortunately, we still have to rely on high roll damage from Magnemite to be able to take it out in 2 turns, even with Sturdy, which we don't get, and we end up losing on his second Pokemon this time. We tried this strategy 30 or so more times, and it just proved to be too unreliable. So we refined our strategy over the next 49 or so attempts. I don't know who's really keeping track. It was me, I was keeping track. And over these 49 attempts, we realized a couple things. First, if we EV trained our Magnemite to have max speed, we would outspeed the Crabrawler naturally. Second, if you use a status move on the Machop on the first turn, the second turn, Hala is likely to use a full heal instead of attack. So if we hit the Machop with Thunderwave on the first turn, there's both the chance of it getting fully paralyzed and not hitting us, or the chance of Hala using a full heal. And if either of these things happen, our Magnemite should be able to take out this Machop without taking any damage. That means it'll go into the Crabrawler with full health and Sturdy still active. And so we'll be able to tank the Z move from the Crabrawler and take it out in 2 turns from Shockwave. And at that point, we have something extra special with Diglett cooked up for the Makihita. But as you can see right here, this doesn't always go according to plan. So we needed to get the correct RNG so that we could actually make it happen. Come on, just a couple more tries. By the time attempt 53 rolled around, we were optimistic. We had a good attempt going. We managed to hit the Machop with the Thunder Wave on the first turn, and then the Machop uses Focus Energy, which is perfect. This move almost guarantees the full heal from Hala the next turn, which he uses, and we hit it with a Shockwave. The next turn, we finish it off with another Shockwave. This is perfect because we're coming into the Crabrawler with Sturdy still active. So now the Crabrawler comes in, and we hit it with a Shockwave on the first turn. We get some low roll damage, which is pretty unfortunate. And now we have to tank the Fightium Z move, which we're able to do thanks to Sturdy. Now all we need is a juicy high roll on Shockwave, which we get on the next turn. Next, Hala sends in Makihita, so we swap in Diglett. We get a safe switch here since this thing always goes for Fake Out on the first turn, which we resist. So on the next turn, we use a cheeky Growl with Normalium Z. This both lowers Makihita's attack and increases our defense by 1 stage. Now all we need is to live through 2 arm thrusts, which have to low roll each time. The first arm thrust does, so we get a magnitude off, and the second arm thrust, please don't kill, please don't kill. It doesn't. Yes, we live and we get a nice high roll with a magnitude 9. Notice how many times I said high roll and low roll? That's how RNG dependent this fight really is. And after a quick 53 attempts, we're able to finally put that fight behind us. Hopefully, unless we wipe. After defeating Hala, we earn that Ride Pager, which is my favorite feature of this game. And it's at this point that I want to call attention to something very important. I want you all to just take a quick look at how stupid Hao is acting in the background of this scene. This is something in a casual playthrough you may not notice, but for the rest of this run, I do challenge you to keep an eye on him. Let's get to the bottom of why he acts like this. I feel like there's more here than he's letting on. Anyway, with Hala defeated, we can head to the next island, but not before we head over to 10 Carat Hill and get our next catch, a Mawile, which would have been pretty useful in that last fight, I will say. Regardless, it's great to have it on the team now. And even better, we got Intimidate on it, which is, one of the best Nuzlocking abilities in the game. From here, we head down to the beach and meet Island Oak, who clearly has never heard of Melanoma. Then we learn how to Mantine Surf, which we very clearly excel at, and then we arrive on Akala Island. And with the level cap raise, we're able to evolve Diglett into this beautiful creature. I've questioned the devs before, but I will never question a Lowland Dugtrio. And in the Pokemon Center in the first city, we're able to pick up the Protect TM, which we teach to pretty much the entire team. Protect OP. And at this point, we get to have another fight with Hao. At this point, his Litten has evolved into a Torracat, which is starting to get really scary for our team. But thankfully, Dugtrio is able to outspeed it and take it out with 1 Bulldoze. That's pretty much the only scary member of his team down. We take out the Noibat with the Metal Claw, and Pikachu comes in and goes down to a Bulldoze. Then we use Magnitude on Eevee because variety is the spice of life. And after we beat Hao, he just leans back and tries to act all cool. I know that you're up to something. We're on to you, Hao. From here, we get to head over to the ranch, where we get to experience truly the worst udder physics I've ever seen.
I wish they had less stiff udders.
Very much agreed, Quinn. And on our way to the water trail, we have a run-in with this broody teen, Gladion. And we quickly dispatch him in a Pokemon battle. His team really just can't do much to us. And finally, we arrive at the water trail, where we face off against this spooky bug, Araquanid. And honestly, with Magnemite, this fight is relatively trivial for us. The Araquanid does carry a Wacom Berry, which does decrease the damage of our first Shockwave, but honestly, its bubble attack just doesn't do enough for it to be scary, even when boosted by Water Bubble and Rain. On the next turn, we use another Shockwave on the Araquanid, and we take it out. Luckily, the Masquerain doesn't even attack us there, and the next turn, it uses Tailwind, and we finish it off with a Shockwave. And from here, it's a pretty quick trip to our next big hurdle, the Fire Trial. Not only does Alolan Marowak one-shot pretty much our entire team, but also it calls in an ally Salazzle that also one-shots our entire team. So this is a little bit sketchy. After picking out the thing that's wrong with this photo, yeah, it's definitely the big Pokemon. We head into the trial. So thankfully, our Dugtrio has ground moves that hit both enemy Pokemon. And it's the only thing that actually outspeeds the Salazzle. So on turn 1, we protect against the Marowak and allow it to call in its ally Salazzle. From here, we use a Bulldoze, which is 4 times super effective against Salazzle and takes it out in 1 hit and does about 3/5 of the health of the Marowak. Unfortunately, it fires back with a Flame Wheel instead of detecting, which it sometimes does, which unfortunately gives us a burn. And we don't have any good switches, so we just have to go for a high roll Magnitude, which we get, luckily, and we take out this Marowak without any casualties. An absolutely insanely lucky roll. And from here, we head into the lush jungle where we get to play everyone's favorite game show, Tree or Not Tree. And after successfully determining whether or not something was a tree, we get to challenge the next totem, Lurantis. This Lurantis is a pretty interesting fight because it does have low sweep, which hits our team super effectively other than Mawile, but fortunately, it can only really just tickle us through Intimidate. So, and I'm not joking here, we actually stall out every single one of its moves and force it to struggle to kill itself. Is it really even a steel type only run if you don't stall things out? Anyway, with that out of the way, we head through the Diglett Tunnel and into Poni City, where we're able to pick up the armor fossil, which we then take to this random trailer park where this guy is somehow able to revive the fossil into a shieldon in the back of his mobile home? I'm not going to question it. This thing is the first Pokemon on our team that actually resists fire, so we'll be able to swap it in, especially with its really good defenses. And to add to all that, it also has the sturdy ability, which makes it an even better switch if we ever get into trouble. And because of its great defenses, we nickname it Hard Boy. Next, we head back to Poni City where we pick up an Eviolite, and we get another encounter, a Honedge. Both Doublade and Aegislash are just S-tier Pokemon. They're going to be insanely strong on our team. We catch it and we name it Lady Slice. And then we have our first run-in with Plumeria. At this point, she's not too scary, but she does have this Salandit who's going to be a real problem once it evolves. After we quickly dispatch Plumeria, we get to challenge the Island Kahuna. The Kahuna Olivia specializes in rock types, which are not really that threatening for our team, so this should be pretty easy. She starts off by leading with Amaranth, so we lead with Mawile, and our Intimidate is able to drop its attack. We go ahead and we set up one Iron defense just for safety, and then we take this thing out with 2 Rock Dooms. From here, she sends in Lileep, who does have Brine, which we don't resist, and does double damage when we get it below half health, which we do on the first turn, and we end up taking a pretty strong Brine. Luckily, it doesn't do too much damage, so our second Brick Break is enough to take it out, and we can leave Mawile in for Ace Lycanroc. From here, we end up getting flinched by the Lycanroc like 4 times, but it doesn't really matter because it can't really do that much damage to us, so we take it out with Brick Break over time. And that's the second island done. At this point, the level cap is increased enough that we can evolve our Shieldon into a Bastiodon and Magnemite into a Magneton. From here, we're whisked away to the Aether Paradise, where this jellyfish alien creature comes out of a portal. And you know what? We do our best to reason with it, but it just keeps shaking its head, so we have to take it out. The most important thing to note here is How in the background. If you don't already know, Game Freak thought How's animations were so good that they copied them over 1-to-1 from How to Hop. I don't know, man. Anyway, we take out the jellyfish thing, and then we head to the third island, where we immediately have a battle with How. He leads with Torcat, so we lead with Dugtrio and take it out with 1 dig from Dimmadome. Next up, he sends in Leafeon, so we swap out our Dugtrio and swap in Magneton. Thankfully, it only knows Giga Drain, which is pretty bad because it has pretty abysmal special attack, so we're able to take it out with a couple flash cannons. Next up is Noibat, who easily goes down to a flash cannon. His second to last mon is Raichu, who hits us with a pretty strong Psychic. He hits us again on the next turn, which leaves us a little bit low, but we hit him with a Tri-Attack, which actually manages to freeze the Raichu. Unfortunately, it thaws out after 1 turn, and it hits us with another Psychic, but we're all good. We take it out with a Tri-Attack. Next up is Tauros, so we swap in Mawile to hit it with an Intimidate and take it out. Before we can progress to the next trial, the game actually makes us go into a library. Honestly, what kind of video game is this? But anyway, from here we head out to Route 10 where we get our next encounter, a Skarmory. And let me tell you, there is a reason why this thing is S tier in competitive Pokemon. It is a beast. It also has the sturdy ability, which not only adds another sturdy boy to our team, but is very strong. And after that, it's just a short bus ride up to the top of Mount Holkulani, where we can prep for the next trial. But before we do that, we're able to head out and catch a Beldum, which right now won't be very good, but once this thing can evolve into a Metagross is going to be insane. So we nickname it Metahoss. Also before the trial, we're able to evolve Honedge into a Doublade. After solving a few puzzles, it's finally time to challenge this round boy. So Togedemaru is a steel electric type, which means it's 4x weak to ground. So we lead with Dugtrio and actually take it out on the first bulldoze that lands. And from here, we bring in Magneton to clean up the Skarmory with a Volt Switch, but this thing actually has Sturdy, so we switch into Mawile, who finishes it off with a Brick Break. Next, we head back to the park where Guzma is giving some guff to the professor. And we won't stand for this, so we take him out in a quick battle. At this point, we progress far enough in the game to get enough totem stickers to pick up Totem Togedemaru from Professor Oak. Not only is this thing normally a round boy, but the totem version is even more rotund. And since it's a totem Pokemon, it actually has access to the hidden ability Sturdy. And for those of you keeping track at home, this is the 4th Pokemon with Sturdy to join the team. At this point, we're ready to head up to Blush Mountain, where we can evolve Magneton into a Magnezone. And you gotta love seeing 3 homies get completely fused together. We head through a couple more routes until we arrive at Tapu Village, where we're able to catch a Sandshrew. This thing doesn't really make the team though. It has a lot of really big weaknesses. Good to have backups, I guess, he says in the most foreshadowing way possible. Now it's finally time for the next trial, and this is the ghost trial. So we head into this haunted supermarket where spooky season is in full swing. We play some Silent Hill minigames until we find ourselves locked in the closet in the back. And let me tell you, this Mimikyu hates having its picture taken more than a middle schooler. The Totem Mimikyu has primarily physical attacks, so we lead with Mawile to intimidate it and lower its attack. In the first turn, we tank a Shadow Claw and then hit it with an Iron Head, which breaks its disguise. And its neck, apparently? That's horrifying. At the end of its turn, it calls in its ally Banette. From here, we tank another Shadow Claw, and then Banette uses Will-O-Wisp on us. We were prepared with a Lumberry, which cures the burn, and we hit Mimikyu with another Iron Head. It doesn't do more than half, so we do actually have to swap out Mawile, who tanks another Shadow Claw and then instantly gets burned by a Will-O-Wisp from the Banette. We stand another turn and tank a Shadow Claw, then blast it with a Flash Cannon, which leaves it on a fraction of health, and then the Banette uses Curse on us. Curse halves its HP, but then makes us take 25% of our HP at the end of every turn. This leaves Magnezone really low. So then we bring in Skarmory, who takes some hits, stalls a little bit with Roost and Protect, but ultimately takes out the Mimikyu with an Iron Head. Finally, it's down to just the ally Banette, who we finished off with a couple more Iron Heads. I feel like we're lucky to get out of that one with our soul. And like the thrill seeker we are, we head right back into the haunted supermarket to get our next encounter, a Klefki. Steel Fairy is an amazing type, and this thing has the Prankster ability, which lets it use its status moves with priority. This thing is going to be extremely strong on this team. Next, we head back to the Aether house, where How in this Team Skullgrunt seem really familiar. And we're challenged by an upgraded Plumeria. We lead with Dugtrio because we don't want to have an unsafe switch in against her now evolved Salazzle. And we're able to take out the Golbat with a couple Rock Tombs. Now the problem child comes in. This Salazzle is crazy fast, and we don't really have any answers other than this Dugtrio. And you know, I really thought our speed up nature, 150 speed EVs, Dugtrio would be able to outspeed a Salazzle that it's over leveled against. But no such luck. And that's our first death of the run. Your luscious locks will be missed, Dugtrio. So now we're in a bit of a tough spot, but at least we do have a couple Pokemon with Sturdy on the team, so we're able to bring in Magnezone, it tanks a Flamethrower, and then hits it and almost takes it out with a Volt Switch. From there, we're able to come in and tank a Flamethrower with a Sturdy Skarmory, and then take it out with an Aerial Ace. Thank goodness for the Sturdy mons, I guess. That's spooky. Next up, we meet up with Grimsley on the beach, who I really hope brought his sunblock, and he just straight up gives us a freaking jet ski. That's sick. Once we finish terrorizing the locals, we head over to Route 16, where we get another encounter, a Prinplup. We nickname this thing Penguin, which may or may not have been my old Xbox Live gamer tag, and we immediately evolve it into an Empoleon, which adding more fire resistance to this team is never a bad thing. Plus, Empoleon is kind of a wall. From here, we head to the outskirts of Potown, Route 17, where we're able to catch a Bisharp and add that to our team as well. We're probably not going to immediately use this thing, but having dark and ghost resistances is pretty clutch. As we're heading into the evil team's secret hideout, we get ambushed by everyone's favorite apathetic uncle, Nanu. He says some stuff to us, and then we head into Potown, where the Spindas are just vibing. Why don't I live here? Anyway, we head through Potown, and I must say, this is the best designed evil team hideout in all of Pokemon. I love the aesthetic here. It really feels very Team Skull. At the end of all this, we head in to challenge King Goose, whose team still isn't really a match for us, so we take him out pretty easily. And now we get to take over as the leader of Team Skull. And that's the run. At least we've accomplished everything I wanted to do. But anyway, at this point we get to take on Nanu, the Kahuna who specializes in dark types. He leads with Sableye, so we lead with Klefki, who has two fairy moves who will hit this thing super effectively. And we're able to take it out pretty easily with a Drain Kiss and a Play Rough. Next he sends in Krokorok, who's really the only scary member of his team because it knows Earthquake. So reading the Earthquake, we swap to Skarmory, who's immune to it, and we tank a Swagger. Luckily we're able to hit an X-Scissor through the Swagger and take out the Krokorok in one hit. Next he sends in Persian, and we're a little bit worried about Skarmory because it does have some rock moves that hit us for neutral, so we bring in Magnezone, who actually ends up tanking the Z Dark move, which very nearly takes it out. Pretty spooky, but not too big of a deal. We survived, so we swap in Klefki and we finish it off with a Draining Kiss. 3 islands down, 1 to go. And at this point we arrive at my personal favorite part of the game, the hottest new dance of 2021. Emphasis, Nanu's. He stays through the standing ovation, and just like that, he vanishes. With the level cap elevated, we're finally able to evolve Beldum into a Metagross. Welcome to the team, new superstar. Then the story takes us back to Aether Paradise, where we're able to pick up the Toxic TM. This is a huge upgrade for our stall heavy team. After a few battles with Daft Punk, we move our way up to the top of Aether Paradise, where we have a battle with an actually upgraded Guzma. to the point where he can actually give us a challenge at this time. He leads with Gliscopod, so we lead with Magnezone, who just learned Discharge, which is easily enough to take that thing out in one hit. Next up, he sends in his Pinsir, who knows a fighting move called Storm Throw, which is 60 power but always crits. We hit it with a Discharge, and we're confident that Magnezone will live through a hit. Which it does, but we're low enough that we feel comfortable switching into Skarmory at this point. We take a Storm Throw and a Stone Edge, and then we take it out with an Iron Head. Next, he sends in Vikavolt, who has an extremely super effective Thunderbolt on Skarmory, so we swap in Magnezone, who tanks a Thunderbolt, heals with a Citrus Berry, and then tanks a Bug Buzz. And at this point, it's taken too much damage, so we outspeed and then switch out with a Volt Switch, which does about half of the Vikavolt's health, which is pretty good. This thing is a kind of a menace on our team right now. We swap in Klefki, and luckily it saw a kill with Bug Buzz, so it goes for that instead of Thunderbolt. And then we protect the next turn and then tank a Thunderbolt with Klefki, but take a ton of damage in the process. We are able to get a play rough off in the process, but this leaves it very low, but still alive, and we don't really have a great swap at this point. We don't really have any other option other than going for another play rough on the next turn, which only has 90% accuracy, which I don't love, but it does hit and we take the Vikavolt out. Next up is his Ace Masquerain, who we bring Skarmory in for, and we just take it out with Toxic. From here, we have a clear shot to the head honcho Lusamine, who turns out was evil all along. I don't know how you can see a frozen Slowpoke and not know your mom's evil. We are talking Lily here, I guess. But anyway, we have a showdown with Lusamine at this point, and she has a really well-rounded team, so it's an interesting battle. She leads with a Clefable, who is obviously no match for Meteor Mash from Metagross, and then she sends in Lopunny, who, despite knowing Fire Punch, uses Thunder Punch on us on the next turn. So we're just able to hammer arm it down. Next up is Melodic, who is a bit of a menace with Hydro Pump, so we protect one turn to stall out the Hydro Pump, and then we swap in Magnezone, who tanks a Dragon Pulse. I don't know why I wouldn't go for Hydro Pump here, but whatever. But the next turn we do actually end up taking a Hydro Pump. Should have protected here, but hard to read this AI. We hit this thing with Discharge, which with its bulky special defense and max special defense EVs is not quite enough to take it out. And it outspeeds Magnezone, so we have to swap him in Empoleon, who's able to tank some hits and then take it out with 2 Bulldozes. Next up is Beware, and this thing hits pretty freaking hard, so we bring in Skarmory and we Toxic Stall it down. Next up is Lilligant, who just keeps going for Teeter Dance over and over and over, so we're able to take it out with an Iron Head and some Toxic damage. And with Lusamine Dispatch, we head to the final island, where we're able to get a Dusk Stone, which we use to evolve our Doublade into an Aegislash. One very unfortunate thing is Aegislash actually doesn't learn King Shield on evolution in this game. We actually have to get it from the move relearner, which is right before the Elite Four, so we're gonna have to use it sparingly. Another upgrade we get access to on the 4th island is the Machamp Ride Pager. God, look at his back abs. They're just like big delicious dinner rolls. Anyway, we head through some story stuff and then into vast Poni Canyon, where we get to challenge a bunch of random Ace trainers in a row that threaten our entire team's existence, like this kind fella whose Banette has access to Giratina's signature move. Anyway, we take care of them, and then Lily confronts her biggest fear of birds on bridges, and she finally figures out that while they're scary, she can literally just walk right by them. As we're reaching the end of the canyon, we get to the 3-trainer gauntlet that's right before the Komodo trial. And these 3 trainers are just ridiculous. They are absurdly tough. I guess actually less so this first guy, we take him out without much of an issue. The second lady we have some ups and downs with, especially with her lead Talonflame, but Empoleon is able to take it out relatively easily. The problems really start when we challenge this guy right here. This guy has a team of 4 Pokemon that are tougher than pretty much every Elite Four trainer in this game. He leads with the Noctowl, which we're able to take out with Magnezone relatively easily, but it does set up an annoying Tailwind. And next up, he sends in his Flygon. We swap in Skarmory and we're basically forced to Toxic Stall this thing, and we take it out. Next up is this Gengar, who outspeeds our entire team, is immune to Toxic, and has max special attack EVs. This thing is a true menace. We protect once and then we swap in Klefki, who takes an immediate Shadow Ball and gets a special defense drop. So we're forced to make another swap to Empoleon, who tanks the Shadow Ball pretty well, but it ends up in a range where it goes down to crit. I think we have to risk it because the crits are only 1 in 32 in this game, but unfortunately, of course, the one time it gets crit is right then. Extremely unfortunate, but switching there actually risks a sweep from this Gengar on our team, and so it's just a necessary risk, but rip Empoleon. From here we bring in Magnezone, who takes a Shadow Ball, but gets a special defense drop. Ugh. At least we are able to get a Thunderbolt off, but it doesn't quite finish off the Gengar. Though we do manage to get a Paralysis on the Gengar, which slows it down a little bit at least. Triple check our speed is higher than this Gengar, even with Paralysis. And then we hit it with a Volt Switch, which we have to use because Curse Body disabled Thunderbolt. And this is extremely unfortunate because this last Pokemon is Slowking, which we obviously want Magnezone in for. But instead, we're going to have to settle for a Metagross. Okay, I guess. Unfortunately, it resists every single one of our moves. We hit it with the Meteor Mash, which does okay damage, and then we take big damage from a Scald. This is a little bit sketchy. And we have to risk dying to a crit burn the next turn, but we do manage to get it down to 1/3 health. But unfortunately, we get burned, which halves our attack, and I just completely forget about it and make the biggest bonehead play and go for a Zen Headbutt even though our attack is halved and lose Metagross. That is a gigantic L, and it hurts even more watching it back this time. But it's supposed to be a challenge run, right? Magnezone cleans this thing up, and we come out of there 2 Pokemon lighter. We replace our fallen comrades and then go into challenge Komodo, who comes in hot just like the champion of the Unova region. Real Pokeheads will get that one. And it cries out placeholder sound here, and we get into the battle. Pretty cool thing about our team is that we have 2 Fairy Steel types, and Fairy's immune to Dragon and resists fighting. So it's going to hit us with some fighting moves, but they'll be neutral on Klefki and Mawile. We lead with Klefki and hit it with a Dazzling Gleam on the first turn, but it has a Roselli Berry, which takes the 4x super effective move and makes it do trivial damage. Then he calls his ally Noivern, who knows Boom Burst, and that hits like a truck. We end up staying in for another turn to get a Toxic off with Prankster on the Komodo. And luckily, Klefki lives. We use Protect on the next turn, but at this point, Klefki's a little low and it just took a Screech, so it has lower defense, so we have to swap in Mawile. It tanks a Drain Punch and then another Screech, but we use Protect on the next turn and then swap to Aegislash because we read a Drain Punch from the Komodo incoming, and Aegislash is immune to Drain Punch. And at this point, the Toxic has gotten so bad that we just need one more Protect and then it goes down. Now we just have to deal with this Noivern. We tank a Dragon Pulse and then we hit it with an Iron Head from Attack Form Aegislash, which does big damage but not quite enough to take it out. Unfortunately, since we don't have King Shield, we're stuck in Attack Form, so we swap in Magnezone, who's able to finish this thing off with a Thunderbolt. Getting the win is great, but honestly at this point I'm still extremely bummed about losing Metagross. Now it's time for Luli and us to play these flutes that open interdimensional rifts for some reason and cause all sorts of horrible beasts to be unleashed on the Alola region. All the Island Kahunas take care of it, of course. My favorite reaction is Nanu, who just sees this pumpkin monster, is like, ah. But anyway, this all culminates in a battle against Ultra Necrozma, who's level 60 and the level cap right now is 54, and this thing has the highest base stat total of any Pokemon ever, I think. Luckily, our Steel type team is pretty well positioned to take this thing out. Well, you might be expecting me to use Sturdy and then Toxic Stall it. You'll be surprised to hear I have a very different strategy in store for you. I didn't want to be boring and use Skarmory to Toxic Stall this thing, so instead we use Bastiodon, who learns a move called Metal Burst, which is basically like Mirror and Counter in one move. So the first turn, Necrozma uses Photon Geyser, and we basically just say, no you. We end up taking a little bit under half health and dealing a little bit under half health. So we stay in for a couple turns, Protect Stall, and heal up with leftovers, and then we hit it with another Metal Burst. And that's that, Necrozma down. At this point, I'm at the end of a really long stream session, and I really just want to get this last totem done, so we end up kind of rushing into all these battles. For this trial, you have to actually fight all the trial captains that you've encountered before getting a shot at the totem. And 2 of these captains in particular proved to be pretty tough for us. We're able to take out Mina and Alima pretty easily, and then we go challenge Lana, the water type captain. At this point, we think this isn't any big deal. She leads with this Lantern, but this thing turns out to be an absolute menace. The first turn, it completely nukes us with a Hydro Pump, which procs our Barret. We fire back with a Flash Cannon, which does effectively 0 damage. We stall with Protect another turn to take a Hydro Pump PP, but at this point, we know that we can't stay in. We swap to Klefki, who ends up tanking a Hydro Pump, but takes big damage in the process. We do have to swap, but we Protect another turn to take another Hydro Pump PP. Now it's down to its last Hydro Pump. So we swap to Aegislash, who eats the last Hydro Pump, no problem. The problem is we have no good way to kill this thing because it has Lightning Rod. It goes for a Thunder Wave, which we Protect, and then the next turn it uses Discharge, which hits us kind of hard. But fortunately, we are able to fire back with a Sacred Sword and get at least a little bit of damage on this thing. But now we're stuck in Sword form, so we have to swap. And weirdly enough, on this next turn, Lana also swaps to an Araquanid. And unfortunately, we had brought in Bisharp, who takes decent damage from Leech Life, which this Araquanid has. So we end up making a swap back to Magnezone. But this Araquanid actually has Waterium Z, which I did not even know. And that move ends up being more than enough to take out our Magnezone. RIP. You will be remembered. Now we're in a pretty tough spot. We bring in Klefki and get a Toxic off with our Prankster ability because we have no other good way to take this Araquanid out. It hits us with a Liquidation, which we just barely live on 3 HP. We Protect for 1 turn, and then we end up bringing in Skarmory to finish out the Toxic Stall. She obviously brings her Lantern back in at this point, so we have to bring in Bastiodon. We get hit with Discharge on the first turn and get a really unfortunate paralysis. But over the next couple turns, we are able to take this thing out with Metal Burst. Finally, she's down to just her Cloister, so we bring in our Aegislash and we're able to smack it with the Sacred Sword, and thankfully it went for spikes on its turn, so it didn't do any damage to Aegislash. But again, now we're stuck in sword form, so we have to swap out and bring in Bisharp. It goes for another round of spikes and then an Icicle Crash, which doesn't do too much damage, so we're able to take it out with 2 Brick Breaks. That was an extremely obnoxious fight, but even worse, next up is the Fire Trial. And without Empoleon, at this point, all we have for this is Bastiodon. Kawaii leads with an Arcanine, so we lead with Bastiodon, of course. The first turn we take a Flare Blitz, and then we set up Stealth Rocks. We want to use these to soften up the rest of the Pokemon on this team, including a Talonflame and an Alolan Marowak. We take another Flare Blitz and then use Metal Burst to deal some damage to this Arcanine, but we're getting pretty low, so we're going to be forced to switch here in a second because we really don't want to risk losing Bastiodon here. We end up bringing in Mawile to hit and Intimidate, and then we'd also given it an Aqua Berry, so it soaks up the Flare Blitz, but the recoil isn't quite enough to take this Arcanine out. Next in line is Skarmory, who also has an Aqua Berry and tanks a Flare Blitz. At this point, we're really hoping that this recoil is enough to take this thing out, but it is just not quite enough. So we have to make one more swap, which we do to Klefki. This thing also has an Aqua Berry, so it's able to take the Flare Blitz, and finally the recoil takes this thing down. Next he brings in his Marowak, and we protect, anticipating a Fire MZ here. And thankfully we are actually able to survive the chip through Protect. But we're too low, so we bring in Skarmory. It instantly gets burned from a Flame Wheel, which is super unfortunate. So we bring in Bastiodon, who also gets burned. Ugh. We do expect a 4 times effective Bone Meringue to be coming out on the next turn, so we bring in Skarmory. And our Skarmory actually is faster than this Marowak, so we can get a Roost off, and barring a crit, we can live through the Flame Wheels. We use Roost a whole bunch of times and get all the way up to full health, and then we're finally comfortable enough to hit a Toxic on this Marowak. From here, it's just a rinse and repeat with Roost, and we finally take this thing down. Finally, he sends in Talonflame, who immediately uses Flame Charge, but luckily Skarmory's able to tank it. And we fire off a Toxic, which unfortunately misses. Now we're in a really tough spot. So our only choice here is to send in Bastiodon and hope that it can live enough Flame Charges to land a Stone Edge and finally take out this Talonflame. We end up living through 2, and we actually land a Stone Edge. Thank goodness. Finally, that battle is over. Unfortunately for me, we are instantly challenged by the Hiker, and our team is in extremely sorry shape. On the first turn, Bastiodon is too hurt to stay in, so we bring in Bisharp, who still has an Aqua Berry, so it should be able to tank a Fire Punch. It does tank it with the Aqua Berry, but unfortunately it gets burned, which makes it so even our critical Night Slash on the next turn doesn't kill. Luckily, Bisharp lives another Fire Punch, but at this point, we are probably going to have to sack him on here. After thinking for a long time, we make the tough choice to sack Mawile. Rest in peace, friend. You did well. With our free swap, we bring in Togedemaru, who's fast enough to finish this thing off with a Zing Zap. We manage to collect the next couple feathers without much of an issue, and we do get to sit in on Nanu's dance crew practice, which is pretty nice. After they finish up, we have a quick battle with Nanu, and then it's finally time to challenge the totem. Unfortunately, this is the Fairy Totem, so we have a pretty good matchup here. We lead with Aegislash, who smacks it with an Iron Head, but it's not quite enough to take it out since it does have +2 to all of its stats. So it is unfortunately able to call in its ally Chansey, who will just relentlessly heal this thing. So we swap to Klefki and put a Toxic on the Ribbon Bee. And honestly, that's pretty much the fight. We do have to swap around a lot to take all the hits, and we do have a pretty close call with Bastiodon here, but it does ultimately go down to Toxic. And we do get to get a satisfying whack at this Blissey with our Aegislash, which is pretty nice. Now it's time to take on the Kahuna Hapu. And she specializes in ground types, which is going to be pretty tough for us. But luckily, we have a plan. And this plan primarily revolves around this funky little move called Magnet Rise. Magnet Rise plus using Skarmory's flying abilities should make this relatively simple for us. First things first though, she leads with a Golurk that has Stealth Rock. And we can't let that get set up because we're going to be swapping around a ton in this fight. So we lead with Bisharp and take it out with a Darkium Z on the first turn. Next up is Mudsdale, who does have a Z ground move, so we swap to Skarmory, who's immune to it. Big reads, we are immune, and we don't end up taking the Z damage. From here, pretty much our only option is to Toxic Stall this thing, so we do that. After a full restore and another Toxic, it finally goes down, and the Gastrodon comes in. And we had planned this all out, down to the move. At this point, we have to start Protect stalling and swapping back and forth to bait Earth Powers and tank Muddy Waters. Something interesting that we did do to make this process easier is we taught everyone on our team that could learn it Magnet Rise. So when we swap in a Pokemon, it tanks a Muddy Water, and then the AI will see that it can get hit by an Earth Power. So we outspeed and we use Magnet Rise, which makes us immune. That allows us to burn another PP of Muddy Water with Protect on the next turn, before swapping. We repeat this process through pretty much every other member of our team, and then we bring Skarmory back in to hit it with a Toxic. Its only other move it has PP left for is Recover, so that means it takes forever for this thing to go down, but ultimately it does go down to the Toxic damage. Finally, she's down to just her Flygon, who has a Dragon move and a Ground move. So what we do here is we swap to Klefki. It takes a Dragon Breath because it's immune, and then we use Magnet Rise, which makes it immune to Flygon's other move, Earthquake. Behold the unkillable Klefki. From here, this god tier Klefki just finishes this thing off with a couple dazzling gleams. Now pretty much all we have is Victory Road into the Elite Four. But before we get there, we actually get ambushed by Gladion. I was totally not expecting this fight, and it does go relatively smoothly. We do just have this one little hiccup. We didn't realize this Zoroark has Dark MZ. And so we go for just a random Protect. We didn't even need to do this, and it uses its Z move, which does more than enough damage to take out our Blade Form Aegislash, even through Protect. And I gotta say, I was very tilted by this. This was another huge bonehead maneuver by me. We didn't even get to use Aegislash when it had King Shield. We try our best to shake that off and dispatch the rest of Gladion's team and then head into the Elite Four. At least we have 6 Pokemon, I guess. Losing Aegislash made a lot of these fights significantly harder. Our first stop is against Olivia, who, if you remember, specializes in rock types, so this one should be a breeze for us, really. She leads with Armaldo and we lead with Klefki. Not too big of an issue, we're able to take it out in a couple flash cannons. Next up is Probopass, who's the only sort of challenging member of her team. We just end up doing a whole bunch of really dumb, pointless stalling with Klefki until we get fed up enough and bring in Bisharp, who unfortunately doesn't currently know Brick Break, but 2 Night Slashes are enough to finish it off after the chip damage that Klefki was able to do earlier. Next up, she sends in Lycanroc. It does no counter, but if we just don't attack it, it won't hit us with counter damage. So we take this opportunity while it's just mindlessly countering to set up +6 attack to make sure that we don't die to a counter. And as an extra safety precaution, we end up using our Z move on it, which is more than enough to take this thing out. Next, she brings in Gigalith, who does no Bulldoze, so we go for a Magnet Rise just to be sure that we won't get hit by the ground move. And the next turn, we finish it off with a Night Slash. Cradily goes down to a Night Slash as well, and that's the first member of the Elite Four down. I was a little bit paranoid after losing Aegislash, I don't know if you could tell. Next, we head in to challenge Moylane, who specializes in Steel types and is going to be a little bit of an annoying fight. But luckily, we do come up with a strategy. He leads with Klefki, so we lead with Bisharp. Now, normally putting a Dark type in against a Fairy type would be a terrible idea, but he doesn't actually have a Fairy attack on this Klefki. Also, Dark types are immune to status from Prankster, which means this Klefki can't do really anything against us other than set up spikes and hit us with meaningless flash cannons. So we're free to go +6 on attack against it. After 3 Swords Dances, a Brick Break is more than enough to finish it off. Next up is his Metagross, who normally would be a problem with a fighting type move, but we're +6 on attack and we outspeed it, so we take it out with a Night Slash. Next up, he sends in his Ace, Alolan Dugtrio. And this thing does outspeed us, so we're not going to be able to use Magnet Rise on it. So we swap in Skarmory, who is immune to Earthquake, and we trade a ton of blows with this thing. Eventually, it runs out of PP on the moves that can hit Skarmory, so Moylane swaps it out and brings in Magnezone. And if you've played competitive, you know that Magnezone matches up pretty well with Skarmory. So we swap out Skarmory and bring in Bastiodon. We tank a Thunderbolt and then hit it with a Metal Burst and bring it down to about half health. And at this point, Moylane makes another swap back into Dugtrio. So, of course, we bring Skarmory back in, and then he brings Magnezone back in. This is a fun little game of AI chicken here. We bring in Togedemaru because we think maybe it can tank the Thunderbolts and put some decent damage on it. It takes a lot of damage from the first Thunderbolt, so we actually end up swapping back to Klefki. Should be able to take a Thunderbolt, right? Wrong. We end up getting crit and lose Klefki. Ugh. At least it did its job in the last fight, though. From here, Bisharp comes back in and Karate Chops this Magnezone, and then it brings in Dugtrio, so we bring in Skarmory. After the Skarmory swap, he actually swaps to Bisharp, so we make a swap back to our own Bisharp and take this thing out with a 4 times effective Brick Break. Now we just have to finish off this Dugtrio with Night Slash from Skarmory, which we do, and that's 2 down. Next, we move on to challenge Acerola, the Ghost-type trainer. And this fight is actually relatively straightforward for a change. We just set up +4 with Swords Dance on Bisharp, and then just narrowly live a crit from a Shadow Claw from Banette, and then proceed to sweep the whole team with Night Slash. Well, I guess not exactly a sweep. Palossand goes for some weird iron defenses, and we go for a Magnet Rise for some reason, so it takes a few hits to take him out, but everybody else goes down in 1 hit. The only kind of scary Pokemon on our team was Frostlass, but it ended up being a non-factor. Finally, we head into challenge Kaili, the Flying-type trainer who has a strange amount of fighting and Fire-type moves on her team. Her first Pokemon is Braviary, so we lead with Togedemaru. We use a Spiky Shield and then a Zing Zap, which doesn't quite kill, so we have to take it out with another Zing Zap on the next turn. Next up, she sends in Halucha, who is super fast and one of the more problematic mons on her team. We take some chip damage from Spiky Shield, and then we swap in Skarmory, who hits it with the old badly poisoned from Toxic. But honestly, it wasn't even really necessary because Aerial Ace just does so much damage to this thing. It almost takes it out in one hit, but it's not quite enough, so she gets a heal off on it, but we do end up taking it out with Aerial Aces over the next 2 turns. Next up, she sends in Mandibuzz for some reason, which we actually end up needing to Toxic Stall because this thing's a freaking tank. It's really not too big of an issue. We end up stalling it out with Roost and Protect. Next is her Ace 2 Cannon, who scares the crap out of me with this Beak Blast move that totally looks like it should be a fire move. My heart definitely skipped a beat when I saw it use that. But thankfully it's a flying type move, so we put Toxic on this Toucannon for good measure, and then we swap into Bisharp, who's able to take it out with 2 Night Slashes. From here, she finally brings in her fire type Oricorio, who has Revelation Dance, which is a 90 power special fire move and extremely dangerous to our team. So naturally, we bring in Bastiodon. We get 1 Metal Burst off on it, but it just keeps using Feather Dance on us, so we end up using Toxic on it just to make sure that it died in a timely manner, which it does. And with that, we just have 1 fight left. Oh, and what a fight this final fight is. It's against Hao, whose team is powered up and very good against ours. He leads with Raichu, who outspeeds everyone on our team and knows Focus Blast, so it'll one-shot anyone who doesn't have Sturdy. Luckily, we have Sturdy on Bastiodon, so we go for a Metal Burst on the first turn, which is more than enough to take this thing out. From here, he sends in Tauros, and this thing knows Earthquake, so naturally we swap into Skarmory and do what Skarmory does best, which is Toxic Stall. And eventually this thing goes down. Next up is Incineroar, who is definitely the scariest Pokemon on his team, so we do have Sturdy active. This means we're able to stay in and get a Toxic off and tank its Z Inferno move, which is a gigantic win for us here. We stand for a little bit longer, and then we bring in Togedemaru, who has Sturdy, which will be able to buy us a little bit more time against this Incineroar. It finally gets low enough that we know that Hao is going to heal on the next turn, so we read that and we go for a Toxic, which thankfully lands. If we miss there, we probably lose the run. We're able to stand for a few more turns, but eventually Togedemaru goes down to an Earthquake. Rest in peace, you sweet round boy. Next, we bring in Bisharp, which, spoiler alert, this is kind of just death fodder at this point to stall out the Toxic. We hit it with a Night Slash, which we think might do a little bit of damage, but it ends up not really being that effective, and Bisharp goes down to a Flare Blitz. This is enough with the recoil and the Toxic to take out this Incineroar, so he didn't die in vain. Next, he sends in his Leafeon, who knows Charm and Baby Doll Eyes, so he gets our attack so low that we have to use Toxic and Aerial Ace in order to take it out. Next up is Crabominable, who honestly, Skarmory just makes quick work of with Aerial Ace and Toxic. Finally, he's down to just his Noivern, and so we actually get to use our Sand Slash for the first time in this run. It smacks it with a 4 times effective Ice Punch, and that's more than enough to finish off Hao. And there you have it, that's the run. This run was insanely stressful, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, it really helps me out if you throw out a like and subscribe to the channel. But other than that, thanks for watching. Till next time.